Welcome back. Goodbye Gear is always a great resource if you haven't had the opportunity to check them out. And so I hope you guys are ready for our next panel. I know I am, and I know if I ask this question of all of you right now, of how are you guys feeling from the anxiety and a burnout perspective, I would expect of all our listeners right now, you guys are as stressed out and burnt out as most of us. So this panel is so important, so relevant, and I know one of the ones we get the most requested each time we do a Mother Honestly conference as well on our socials. And we always want to utilize that this is a great resource to utilize the Mother Honestly community when you're feeling stressed or anxious. We can always connect you with others individuals in the community. So please keep that as a resource. So again, this panel is presented by House of Wise, which if you haven't had an opportunity to check them out, they are my favorite thing and well stocked in our house. But I'll let Amanda tell you more about that. But joining me on stage right now is Katya Lieben, the co-founder of Hey Mama. Hi, Katya. How are you doing today? I can't wait to connect. How you doing, hon? Oh, try it one more time. Is it still on mute or can you hear us? Not yet, but we'll get this. Don't worry. Everyone, today we have had the fun of the virtual experience of having a modern day seance of dropping in, dropping out, seeing if we can hear us. But while you work on your audio, I'll go ahead and bring up our next speakers as well so we can get the panel started. So Dr. Pooja Lakshmi, MD, is joining us as well, and she is the founder and CEO of Gemma. Dr. Pooja, hi, how are you today?
Hi, Kristen. It's so great to be here. I'm very excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. And right behind her is Stephanie Redliner, the founder and CEO of Lioness Leadership. Stephanie, how are you doing today, my dear?
Hi, it's so great to be here and talk about this topic.
So excited. And Renaud Vitale is joining us as well. She's the SVP of Communications and Strategy at Wells Fargo Advisor and a resident badass. How are you today?
I like that. I'm good. It's Ronke Fality, and I'm excited. You're welcome.
Thank you on that one. I have not, everyone, I will be beaten after this event by Blessing severely for everyone's mispronunciation.
It's all good. I'm excited to be here.
So glad. And last but not least, the sponsor of our panel is the House of Wise founder and CEO, Amanda Gotes. How are you doing today, Amanda?
Good. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, that's perfect. And Katya, I'm going to check back in with you. How's the mic going so far? That's all right. We're going to get it going on that. So ladies, while Katya continues to work on it, if you have your ear pods in, I would say try connecting that. If not, rejoin the StreamYard. This is what we do in the virtual environment. And this is why as moms, we can basically run the world, and we do. So Dr. Lakshmi, I'm going to start with you. If you would be so kind and introduce yourself to the panel.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Dr. Pooja Lakshman. I am a physician specializing in women's mental health. I am also an author and a writer and a frequent contributor for the New York Times, mostly for the parenting section. And I'm the founder and CEO of a women's mental health digital education startup that's called Gemma. And we are a group of physicians that founded Gemma. And our whole, what we do at Gemma is really educate women about the importance of not only using psychological tools to bolster yourself against the toxic systems that we live in, but also all of our curriculum is built on a public health socio-ecological model. So at Gemma, my real thesis and passion is that we can't talk about mental health without, in the same breath, talking about the broken social systems that we live in. We need to bring those two together in order to actually empower women and also drive change. So I'm super excited to be here and share some tips and tools that we can all use during these crazy times.
I don't think, just when I think it can't get any crazier, it does. And like that each day we all take it in stride. Katya, how you doing? I'm going to check back in with you and see how the mic's doing. You hear me? Oh, okay. We'll keep going on it. It's okay. This is what we'll do. So keep trying. Yep. We'll keep going through it. We are prepped and ready to go. Stephanie, if you would be so kind, and I will let you introduce yourself to our lovely audience. Sorry, Stephanie, go ahead and just unmute yourself if you could.
I was just saying, I'm so grateful to be here and how like nice it is to we're all just going with the flow, right? The way of the world and how we have to roll today. So we're doing it in action live today. So hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Redlener. I'm the CEO and founder of Lioness Leadership. We're an underground society and feminine leadership company that supports women in high growth, high stress environments to bring back their joy. So I work with a lot of women who, especially women who are working and caregiving and parenting, all of that, to put themselves first. Because I see so many women putting themselves last over work and families. And so I really work with them to develop a life and business strategy that feels fun and easy and pleasurable while still achieving everything they want. And I'm super passionate about helping women feel alive from the inside out.
I love it, and I can't wait to hear more about it. Roanoke, if you would be so kind, and I'll put you up next and tell us a little bit more about your journey and who you are.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep,
Thumbs
we're
up.
good.
Okay, good. I'm Ronke Falati. I am a mother of four. So I have kids from 10 to 2. And I would say mother is my most important role and most consequential role and most fragile role. So I thank each of you for being my sisters in the village of motherhood. I'm also senior vice president at a major brokerage firm where I get to lead communications and strategy work. Like that's not busy enough. I'm also the CEO and founder of Corriday, which is the place where ambitious mothers gather. And we do that through the I Am Summit. I am for Ambitious Mother, and it's a storytelling and restorative care summit. And yeah, so I'm excited to be in the conversation. I feel seen when I'm with you all, and you know the reel before this session started with the CVS. I feel like that's been me a lot, especially having corporate America responsibility, having home responsibility, and having a purposeful project to birth into the world.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. And yeah, I think we'll love as we get started on this to hear more about that summit as well. Amanda, you last time, so I have to say last time, Amanda, I was so excited to hear you speak at our last conference we had, which is we love about Mother Honestly. You had a real-time event. So you weren't able to join us last time, but you're back with us now. Go ahead and share a little bit about you and your journey.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Ooh, is that echoing? Can you hear me okay?
Nope, you're good on our end.
Okay, good. So my name is Amanda Getz, founder and CEO of House of Wise. We are helping women take control of their sleep, sex, stress, and strength through originally formulated CBD-based products. I founded the company about 2 years ago. I found myself at the height of my corporate career. I was managing the brand of a big public company, and I had 3 kids under the age of 4, and I had just filed for divorce. So I was dealing with everything life is throwing at you. And then a pandemic hits. And so then I was dealing with that on top of it. And I saw my friends drinking more alcohol than I had seen them drink really ever. And I had been working on these products about a year before because I saw the benefits that CBD has on what it does to your central nervous system and bringing down your cortisol levels, and how women really needed an alternative to still feel that same come down and transition period when they put their kids to bed or when they log off work. And so we are a CBD company, but more than that, we are kind of helping talk about permission and transitions to go from one role to the other, and giving yourself the space and intentionality in a day to actually still get your workout in or still seek pleasure. And I'm so excited that Stephanie is on this call. And because it's those things all support anxiety, like orgasms support your stress and anxiety. So like just removing the stigma around talking about those things and creating space for them.
I'm so excited to hear this. I think it's going to be such a great topic. Katya, we're going to check in again. How's it going?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yay, we got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Better late than never.
You know what? That's the journey. So I will turn it over to you guys. I'm going to pop off stage, and I can't wait to hear this one.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Katya Libin. I'm the co-founder of Hey Mama, a community for working moms who are growing careers and families. And this conversation is really near and dear to my heart. I've personally been a founder that's been super stressed and had a lot of anxiety and really struggled with the balancing act of it all. And now I'm really passionate about helping other founders, not make some of those same mistakes. I think that we're in this time right after COVID where we're kind of like on the coattails, where moms are finally starting to reemerge, but we're so tired. And so together, I think we're really going to have some solutions here, and just such a huge fan of Blessing and everything you're building at Mother, honestly. So let's go ahead and dive into the questions. I know the data around, mothers and work and job loss has been pretty dismal. They say 42% of women have been suffering from burnout from recent studies on women in the workplace in 2021. How do we recognize, when stress is reaching a burnout level, and when our health may be in jeopardy? So anyone feel free to pop up who wants to answer this one.
Maybe I can start. Thank you so much, Katya, for sharing those statistics, and really glad that your mic is working and we get to be in conversation. One of the things that I've written about before is just how we need to reframe the word burnout, even because burnout itself, when we use that word, when our employers use that word, it's shaming, right? Because it puts the onus of change back on the individual again. I like to say betrayal, because really what this has been is societal betrayal of mothers, of caregivers, of folks who are needing more support and not getting it from their employers, from insurance companies, from the whole system, right? So I think, as a physician, as a psychiatrist, one of the ways that I often, or I remind folks, it's normal to feel stressed. And what we're feeling right now, these rates that we're seeing of anxiety, which in some studies for new moms are as high as 70%, like 3 out of 4 moms right now that are struggling with clinical levels of anxiety. That's not normal. And it's really easy to, in this kind of 2-year period, where it seems like everybody is underwater, it's really easy for that to become normalized and for the struggling to become normalized, because everybody else around you is also in the same boat. So what I really want to kind of communicate to folks that are on this call today is we don't need to, we really need to remember that if you're having trouble functioning, if you're not able to get out of bed, if you're not able to do the things that you need to do, that it's important to actually seek help, to have conversations with a professional, to reach out for support. Because in this type of climate, it's just really easy for this to become sort of background noise. We've been living with it for so long. And I see this as, I'm a psychiatrist, I'm a physician. I have struggled with depression and anxiety myself in the past. That's part of my reason for founding Gemma, because it took me so long, having all the resources that I have, to find the right therapist for myself. I've had my own kind of long journey and in that space, right? And I'm somebody who knows all the things, and it was still so hard. So I think it's really important that we have these conversations, and that we recognize when it gets to a point that you're avoiding your friends and family because you feel so panicked that you can't have a moment of joy or contentment with your children because you feel so guilty about the fact that you're a bad mom, that it's time to talk to somebody and time to seek out some extra support.
Yeah, that's so incredibly important to look for those signals. I wonder if, just to kind of get a temperature of the room for our listeners, if you want to pop into the chat and just share whether you're an entrepreneur, you're freelancing, you're taking a break, you're in corporate, and maybe just on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being like reaching kind of complete overload level, and 1 feeling pretty good. Where are you on the burnout spectrum? I think that would be really helpful. Does anyone else have anything to add on that question before we move on?
So I wanted to add, about how you start feeling it in your body. So I will tell a quick story. I had a baby December of 2019, and I was supposed to go back in the office in April, and then pandemic hit. And I will never forget it. It was end of October. I just walked out of the doctor's office and I sat in the car and I sobbed because I did something for myself. And it took my body caving, literally. I had a crook. I had to go to see a doctor, and I recognized that I need to schedule me. I'm scheduling everybody else. But, like they say in the airport, put your mask on first. I didn't have my mask on. And so their physical cues. I didn't have to have my body like actually like falling apart for me to go, but there are all these cues, there are all these ways. And what I find, and to have triumph, is to really find people that you can talk to, find community, find, different different spaces. And I too was like the people Amanda created House of Vice for. I mean, my husband was like, "You're drinking a little too much." Like, what's up? But it was one of those things where it was extraordinarily hard. It's gotten better, but it's not, it's still not where it needs to be. But I think I would say once you start seeing the signals, like you said, if you're having pain, if you're in your body, in your mind, in your soul, just reach out to a sister friend. And, the Mother Honestly platform and community is a great one, to definitely reach out to, as is A Mama, as is I Am, as is, all these spaces that we're creating for women in this life stage.
Absolutely.
I kind of want to jump in and add to that, because I have like a very tactical thing I think about, where like, imagine you're a car and like, say you never ever got an oil change, you never got gas, you never got a tune up, right? Like, you're going to break down and have to like call roadside assistance. And so I try every day, like mentally, I have this intentional framing of like, did I stop for gas today? Like, personally, did I get a tune up? And for me, it's like every day I have to like stop for gas, whatever that means, whether that's like I take a bath and I lock the door and my kids are watching TV and no one gets to talk to me for 30 minutes and I, do whatever I need to do. But then I also have a tune up, and the tune ups used to be like once every 6 months when I was less stressed, but they now are like once a quarter, where I have to unplug for a full like day, or maybe it's a weekend where I'll like schedule something, but I just framing it as like a daily and then a tune up, so that I don't have my car like broken down on the side, because that has happened to me. I think we've all hit breaking points. I started House of Wise because I hit a breaking point, but even still, with all the tools, I found myself in the ER in December because I was having a panic attack. I had to get off an airplane at one point. And we don't realize, and it was because I hadn't had my like tune up. So I think it's really, really important that we recognize and prevent it before it's like past that point.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue actually to Stephanie, and kind of like the preventative care, so that you don't get to a place where you're running on fumes and running on empty. Steph, you work with a lot of powerful women. You're advising Fortune 100 companies and startups and high growth founders. Like, what should individuals look for when they're seeking kind of coaching and support? They're waving the white flag, or they're ready to go and get some help. And what tips do you feel like you can offer employers in the audience who are really, wanting to create healthier workplaces and better culture?
Absolutely. First of all, Amanda, I love that you said the car analogy. I'm like the fuel, right? Sort of, if the car is how we get from point A to B, the fuel is how, like, the engine, right? And if we have no fuel, we can't go. And so I love that you said that. I'm totally on that same train. A couple of things. I wanted to say it's very common for women to isolate when they're feeling like this, when the actual truth is we need to lean in, right? This feeling of I'm the only one, I'm alone in this, right? It's so common. And that, like, let me retreat until I can figure it out. And I just believe the way of the future of like women leaders is how we support on each other, right? How we realize we're not alone. Also, another thing of emotions, right? If you're feeling, I work a lot around emotional mastery, understanding the language of your emotions. So if you're feeling agitated and angry and upset, it's likely that there is a boundary that you need to set for yourself, right? You are overextending yourself. You are like leaking out, giving to everyone and not yourself, right? Like looking at that, right? And then also changing the language of emotion. Crying is actually amazing. Like, let's let crying be amazing and feel good. It's like cleansing of the soul. So if we can say, oh, I'm crying and I'm proud I'm crying, it changes the whole narrative of like, why poor me, and like, go me. I'm like feeling feelings. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation. And then the other thing I think in terms of coaching and leadership and inside companies, it's so often companies kind of want, or people want to get a coach when they're at a breaking point. And I just want to say it's really helpful to have a coach always, right? Like every incredible athlete has got a coach. Every incredible, right? So it's not like, oh shit, we have nothing. We're like at wit's end. How do we fix it, right? How do we prevent it? And so I think bringing coaching in is really, really critical kind of earlier on. Also, how leaders treat themselves is an example of how teams will treat themselves. So as a leader, you are giving an example not only to your team, but to your families, right? Especially moms with young girls. If you are putting yourself last, you're showing your children, especially women, to put themselves last. And I really believe we have an opportunity to rewrite that paradigm and what it means. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone want to piggyback off that? I saw a lot of head nods.
I was just going to add that I love everything that you said, Stephanie. I had a conversation recently with a patient. I'm actually pregnant and with my first right now, and I went through a long IVF journey. And one of my patients said to me, like, "Oh my gosh, like, how are you feeling? How are you dealing with it?" And I'm like, I have my own therapist too, right? And I have a coach, right? So even people that are kind of the people at the top have the biggest support systems as well too. And I think it's so great what you were saying, Stephanie, that we need to be more transparent about all of the support teams that all of us have, that enables us to do the things that we want to and need to be doing. One point I wanted to make is, I think it was Ronke that had the tip about making space for yourself and scheduling me, which I think is such a powerful reframe and kind of cope. And sorry, my cats are going crazy right now. So, but guilt, what I see in my practice is guilt. That's what gets in the way. And this kind of like mental self-talk around, well, I'm being selfish. Mm-hmm. I'm being selfish if I make an appointment for myself to go to the doctor to get my thyroid checked. Like, in what world does that equate to selfish? I think it's just like reminding ourselves like how these narratives, which are coming from the outside, right? That this is all our social conditioning that we learn at a very young age, and kind of piggybacking what Stephanie said, like as a mom, you're modeling for your daughters. If you have daughters and if you have sons, right? We're modeling what real self-care looks like for the next generation. So it's actually really powerful and proactive to be taking those steps and saying, mom needs some alone time right now, and that teaching that vocabulary. The other one thing that I'll say too is that I think in this conversation where folks are being so wonderfully vulnerable, like, Amanda talking about the panic attack, I think it is also important to note that sometimes these symptoms require medication, and that's okay too, and that we really need to, I think, normalize all these different avenues of getting care for yourself and advocating for yourself. While medication isn't the answer for everybody, for some folks it is the right fit. And so being okay with choosing many different options for taking care of your health.
Yeah.
So I wanted to jump in and talk a little bit about guilt, right? And I think we see guilt show up in so many ways. And as a mother to 3 girls, as an employer of people in corporate America, people within my company, both men and women, one of the things that I am now very intentional about is making sure that we know that our family is not just our coworkers, and making sure that we aren't over prioritizing work at the expense of home because of that guilt. Like, I'm not showing up everywhere I need to be. I feel like I'm not killing it at home. I'm not killing it at work. I'm not really giving my whole self to either thing. And I made a conscious effort. So Hey Mama had this mother initiative last year, and I actually made a conscious effort for my corporate resume. I put mother on there with a nice chunk, just as big as my chief of staff role, just as big as all these other things, because that's who I am. I changed my LinkedIn and it says mother, and it says Fality household on it, as this is what I do. I have 10 years experience in that space. And quite honestly, it's the most important. So I think the more leaders start to normalize and make sure that like we are all in this together, childcare in this country is either, to quote Lesson, it's either inaccessible or unaffordable. And so we're all dealing with this guilt, but because we deal with it privately, it feels like it's our private thing, it's our private shame. And we're not coming into the light, we're not coming into the community, we're not saying we can't do that. So I think when we're in positions of power and in positions of influence, it's really, really important. My husband likes to say that I'm translucent, not just transparent. And it's really important to not just show the pretty and to just be human and say, this has to come first. And with or without me, I work for a multinational, Fortune 50, right? With or without me, my company will make $1 billion a day, right? But and as I'm fortunate to also have a really great support system at work. And, I recently had the conversation and I said, look, there are many people who can do what I do. I know I love being ambitious. I love my work, but there's only one person in the entire universe who can do the work it is to shepherd these 4 lives in this age limit. And so there are times I'm going to say no to work things. There are times I'm going to pull back. And so, and I think the more we normalize that and feel less guilty, we'll feel like, oh, it's not just me. And maybe that guilt would dissipate. That's kind of my hypothesis. So just wanted to share that. And thank you, Dr. Pooja, for sharing that perspective.
Thank you, Ronke, for sharing and highlighting the Motherhood on the Resume initiative. I think it gave a lot of women that confidence that motherhood has made them stronger, when I feel like these past few years, it's felt like there's been so much pressure and expectation and weight that we've been carrying in the household, that these skills, they have to be transferable. All of this experience we're gaining has to have made us so much stronger. You brought up an interesting point about anxiety. We've all been talking about vulnerability. How would you advise, someone that is going through a really anxious time to even communicate that to their boss, and how to talk about anxiety from a place of vulnerability and strength as opposed to, I can't handle this and that's why I have anxiety?
I can jump in first, and because I feel like I just had this conversation, and then others can jump in as well. So, in leadership development, I think there's a book called Critical Conversations, right? Or Courageous Conversations. And you start with what I want you to hear and what I don't want you to hear. And so for me, I've recently had this conversation with my boss, who I have a good relationship with. So I think that matters. And I also think it matters that you're killing it at the time you're having the conversation. And so I said, I'm nervous to have this conversation with you, but we're about to have a courageous conversation. And what I want you to hear is that the wage gap persists because women feel they have to exit because they have no other choice. What I don't want you to hear is that I'm giving up. However, here are the things that I need in order to make my life work. And in this current situation, it's not sustainable. And you see where the tree is going to fall, and it's not going to be good for anybody. And so I want you to enter into this conversation with me. And so I find that really helps, like that framing. I want you to hear this, I don't want you to hear that. That way you kind of interrupt whatever's in the mind, because we tell so many stories of ourselves. People assume stories, but if you can just address the elephant in the room, or you address the objection, like in sales, I think that helps to create clarity in communicating what our needs and our wants and our desires are.
Absolutely. And not just at work, but at home too, having the courage to have these difficult conversations with your family, whether it's, your parents or your partner or the people around you or even your kids. I love the way you phrased that. And I would definitely recommend that book, because having difficult conversations is difficult. Amanda, you wanted to create this product to really help solve for anxiety in more of an immediate sense, right? So it's like preventative care day to day, but also as someone feels that it's coming on, they can take House of Wise. Like, how have you seen women integrate this into their lifestyles to really like life hack and improve their day-to-day ability to navigate the good moments and the bad?
Yeah. So stress, if you just think about stress and what it does, is it allows your adrenal glands to release more cortisol. And then, and Dr. Puja, you can jump in at any point, but then when you have high cortisol levels, that suppresses natural release of things like your natural melatonin or natural, libido hormones, etc. And so it's this like horrible cycle of when you're stressed, then you don't get a good night's sleep, then you're not rested the next day. So then you're looking for other solutions. You might eat unhealthy. You might grab that glass of wine, and it just becomes a snowball effect. And so CBD, it helps bring down your cortisol levels, and it works with your central nervous system, and it is plant-based. And I think a lot of people have misconceptions, like it is not a head high. There's no psychoactives. And in fact, THC does sometimes increase anxiety. CBD doesn't have high levels of THC in it. And so it's really, really important to understand, like for me, because I was an ACE certified nutritionist and personal trainer, an athlete my whole life. And so I knew like, oh, okay, I need protein to build muscles. But when it came to stress and anxiety, I didn't understand what the things that we're putting into my body were affecting my brain and my central nervous system. So I think it's really, really important to just assess kind of this like flywheel effect that you have on, starts with stress, and then it usually goes into sleep. Then it usually goes into libido, where you're like, I can't even get in that headspace because I'm so tired. And so for me, creating this line of products was one, to start to like remove the stigma or even just like confusion around CBD, because it was put in everything and people were like, I don't know what the heck this stuff is. And then two, create intentionality in your day. Because for me, I love talking about guilt. I think that we are like shoulding all over ourselves. We should be doing this. We should be doing this. We should be, working, but we're with our kids. We should be with our kids, but we're working. Like there's guilt, and then there's intention. And for me, intention is like my superpower. Like if I sit down to work for an hour in the morning, I know the two things I have to get done so that I don't get distracted with anything else. If I'm going to be with my kids on the weekend, I'm putting my phone away and I'm not answering anyone because I'm going to be intentional. And in the day, in those micro moments with like our gummies, for example, for me, it's a signal of intention. If you pop a strength gummy, which is CBD and caffeine, you just signaled to yourself almost in a Pavlovian type way that you are making time for your workout. And yes, the caffeine's going to kick in 30 minutes, but you've also told yourself, I have just given myself permission to go put my workout as the priority. And so I love that these are like little permission moments throughout the day. And even with sex, like holy moly, becoming a single woman after having 3 kids, I was like, I feel like sex is so wrapped up in like procreation instead of pleasure, especially when you're a mom. It's like, oh, okay, I now have my kids. Like, do I still like feel sexy all the time? And really like removing that shame around like pleasure actually helps with stress and anxiety. And you have to make intentional time for it. Like, even if you're single, like solo sex, like figuring out how that becomes a part of like your routine so that you can look at yourself and be like, I deserve pleasure. I deserve love. I deserve joy. And these, for me, these are like micro moments every day that you're allowing yourself or giving yourself permission for those things.
Absolutely. I mean, so much of what you said resonates. And I say every woman would probably be better off with a couple of orgasms a day, to keep the doctor away. Stephanie, I feel like you must be jumping out of your seat. This is a lot of the work that you do. How have you seen women be able to bring pleasure and kind of the correlation between pleasure and success? Because I think sometimes we think they're quite separate, but they might be a little bit more correlated than we envision.
Yeah. You know me well. I'm like unmuted, like face forward, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get in here. So I think again, like Amanda is so aligned with what you're sharing. And often we do like pleasure last, right? Let me take care of everyone. And then if I have time, and then it's 11 o'clock and like, I'll watch that Netflix show, right? I like to talk about pleasure as a business strategy, right? Because actually, if you look anatomically at our bodies, a woman's body is capable of 2 times the amount of pleasure as men. So we actually are we are built for pleasure, and it's the thing we deny ourselves. And I use the word turn on a lot, but like a woman who is in her pleasure, who is feeling good, not only increases serotonin and oxytocin and all of that, right? It's just like she is radiating, right? So you can see the difference. And when I talk to women leaders, right, we can all imagine that woman leader who is, or the mom who's stressed out, not taking care of herself, not having any pleasure in her day. You see it in her face. But a woman who is having more orgasms, a woman who is, adding these micro moments of pleasure feels better. And that is like magnetism. That's magnetic leadership, right? So it's actually not a thing that you get to earn. It's your birthright. And how do you infuse that in every area of your life? And such a juicy topic. And I'm so glad we're here talking about it.
Yeah, we could do a whole panel just on that.
Totally.
We may need a separate conversation just to dive in. I actually because I'm on my phone, I don't know how much time we have left, but assuming I have time for a couple more questions before we get to Q&A. Yeah? Okay. So I'm sure everyone's in a different place, right? We've had moms that are transitioning across every different area of career. We've seen so many women leave the workforce now, or maybe potentially try to come back. What's like a small step that a woman could take today to bring more ease and more joy into her life? And I think a great way to frame that, I don't know if anyone here journals daily. I'm imagining maybe some of us do. What is a journal prompt that each of you do, or a couple, that really allow you to reframe and stay grounded, that maybe we could give us some kind of tactical tips that some of the audience can think about and maybe integrate into their day-to-day, either in the morning or at night, to kind of try to reframe some of the anxiety that might be popping up and combat it with some reflection?
I'm happy to jump in here too. I journal every day in my life, and it's been one of the biggest game changers. And one of the things that I always start with is celebrations and brags. I write my celebrations every single day, right? To be able to like, what am I celebrating? What's good? Because so often we're sort of focused on what's not working, to build that muscle of being like, this is actually good. Here's what I'm celebrating. And sometimes that celebration is, I got out of bed today and like my kids are good and my work's decent, right? Sometimes that can be a celebration. So it's just like getting in the habit of celebrating. The other thing I highly recommend is really tuning in with your desires. What do I desire? What do I want is a really, really important question to have, not only on the daily basis, but in your life, right? To be intentional around your life. And then a hack I like to do. So it's like, if I desire to let's see, be a badass mom, even though I might not feel like it, I want to like, how do I get in the energy of being a badass mom? Do I put on a song and dance that way, right? Like get in the energy of where you want to be. So you're not just waiting for something to happen to then get it, right? So like already, I'm a big fan of dance breaks. 3 minutes dance breaks can go a long way.
So I recently, we had this I Am Summit that Blessin was one of our keynote speakers at in Paradise Valley in February. And one of the journaling prompts that I learned from Abimbola, who is the founder of Leaders Lane, which is executive coaching, she has this 2 things. It's very simple, and I've started practicing it, which is grateful nights and hopeful mornings. So, just at night, what am I grateful for? What's the one thing that I'm grateful for? And then in the morning, what's the hopeful thing? And then she puts a spin on the hope as if it's already happened. And so because your brain, I believe the psychology of it is that your brain, when you tell your brain you've already done something, it actually conspires to make it true. And so in the hopeful mornings, I have found that I am more productive. And in the grateful nights, I find that I have less stress, and I'm able to go to sleep without thinking a lot. So, Leaders Lane is our work, and I think it's been impactful to me.
I love that so much, and kind of taking it a step further. Like some of the times, the things that give me anxiety are my fears, right? Like they're the things I'm really deep down scared of that I'm maybe not vocalizing enough, or I'm not communicating to my friends or my family. And I actually got this from Stephanie the other day. You know, I had a lot of anxiety, and she said, write down all of your fears and then write down a reframe for those fears. How can you think about them differently? And I just find that so powerful, because if we don't have anyone to hear what we're scared of or have a safe place to vocalize it, then it just kind of festers in our mind and it grows and it kind of leads to the anxiety that I think so many moms face. I don't know if our audience can relate to that. But yeah, would love to, hear any kind of final tips that you guys have for everyone on managing anxiety, managing burnout, and things that are working well for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can jump in here with some last thoughts. So one of the things that I see in my practice is that, and what everyone has talked about here, is that we're giving too much of ourselves away to everyone else in our lives, and we're not keeping enough for ourselves. So at Gemma, one little prompt that we've used is take out the trash Tuesday. So having Tuesday be your day where you look at your schedule, you cross off the meetings that you really don't need to be in, you cross off the coffee dates that you really don't want to go to, and you really clean house. And for me, I consider it a good week when I've said no to at least 3 requests. It's up to me to set those boundaries for myself. And I think as women, that's one way that we can take ownership of our time, of our space, and also that we can remind ourselves that we create our own agency, and it's up to ourselves to employ it. So this was just a lovely conversation. It was so nice to be here with all of you ladies, and yeah, I would love to keep in touch with everybody, and always open to comments.
Absolutely. I love that. Taking out the trash Tuesday. I mean, that's genius. So helpful. I think we're going to start taking some questions from the audience soon, but let me know if I'm off again on my phone. I can't quite see the internal chat. So let me know how we can go ahead and take some questions from the audience, and then we can spend a few more minutes maybe answering anyone that has a burning question right now. If you're feeling inside that you have something you really need to ask, now is a great time. So maybe we'll just have people drop them in the chat.
And Katya, while we're waiting for those, I just want to add one more thing as people are thinking about going back to work or kind of all these. We talked about boundaries, we talked about guilt. One thing that was a game changer for me, I need to get into journaling. That's one thing that I have yet to figure out how to come into my life, but I see the power in it. But I have these little things that honor the transition between all my different roles in life, because when I am in my CEO founder mode, I find myself leaning very much into masculine energy, whatever you want to call it, but I am in assertive mode. That is a very different mode than when I am with my kids. And it's a very different mode than when I am with a partner. And honoring the transition has become a huge thing for me. And I've created little rituals or almost ceremonies, if you will, of when I'm done with work. I created this idea of a commute bath, because during COVID, I didn't have a commute anymore. And so I couldn't get out of work mode and into mom mode. And so at 4:45 every day, I went and took a bath before my babysitter would leave. And so for 15 minutes, I was literally in the bathtub, and I would tell my kids, I got to go become a mommy. It's like Superman, right? He went into the phone booth, but I had to go into the bathtub to become a mommy. And then I started to think about that for all things. It's I have a song that I play. It's the same song that I play before I get into work mode and boss mode. And now I have a playlist that I play, and I'll take a sex gummy if I'm going on a date. And so there's just knowing that we are not physically built to go from one mode to the other like that. And I think it's just important to allow space for those transitions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that tip. I love these thoughtful, sexy, intentional transitions that don't feel so abrupt. And this was just such an inspiring conversation for me personally, just hearing from you all and your advice and tips, and knowing that we're all just trying to figure out together. And if anyone's going to come up with a solution, it's moms. So I want to thank you all so much for your time, and thank all the moms that took time out to be here. And just showing up to listen to these conversations is an act of self-care. It's a bold act just to prioritize yourself. And I could talk to you all for hours. So thank you so much.
Hey, Katya. I think we had one question in the chat that,
Oh, great.
Kristen, do we have enough time to answer it?
Yeah, do we have time?
Do it very, very quick, round robin, if you ladies don't mind. And the question was, what advice do you guys have for those that are working in a highly demanding job, and that someone that works direct care and a supervisor for group home for teens that has to be on call, shift work, that type of thing, and it's very mentally hard to check out. So Katya, I'm going to start with you actually at the top of the panel. What's your advice for a highly demanding job? And then Dr. Lakeisha and I will go to you next.
Yeah, I'd say find ways to nourish yourself throughout the day. So even if it's like a bottle of water with a cucumber in it, or some special snacks that make you feel good, or a way that you can take a break, you're probably in such an intense state throughout the day that having a few minutes, an hour that feel like yours, pop a gummy or listen to a song, might make all the difference to get you to the place at the end of the day. But yeah, all the strength to you. That's not easy. Teenagers are very difficult, and you're probably a saint to be able to figure out how to manage that. I think you're on mute, Dr. Pooja.
Whoops, I was muted. It sounds like you're somebody who's been kind of an essential worker and on the front lines for quite some time. So just acknowledging where you are, that this is really tough and that you might be burnt out, right? And so it's important to find allies in your life, the safe spaces, people that you can talk to and say, hey, look, I'm reaching crisp state here. We need to come up with a plan so that I can actually have some support. I can't run at 200 for another year. I would say that for caregivers, for folks who work in healthcare, who work in the service industry, it's actually even more important that you have your backup team. I know it can feel like, especially if you're somebody who went into this type of helping profession, you're a giver. You're definitely a giver. We know that. And it's actually even more important for you to make sure that you have your team behind you and to be able to receive some help and support. I know it's not an easy thing. I don't want to pretend like it's an easy thing. These are hard choices to make.
So to jump in, there's a quote recently that I heard, and it's powerful. There's a God, and it ain't me. So I think being very conscious and aware that you can only do so much, I think it's important. And the other thing that I wrote down is you might be accustomed to the adrenaline rush that you get from being the one in need all the time. And so my advice to you would be to take the courageous acts to delegate more so you can actually level up to where you want to be. It's very much what Dr. Pooja just said, making sure you have your team actually take on that work. So check out, shift your energy by shifting your space. For me, I leave my laptop at work when I want to be intentional for being home, and know that there's a God and it ain't you. That's what I would say.
Great advice, Stephanie.
I love that. I would just say two things. Micro moments. Micro moments are really important. Those 3-minute breaks, those 3-minute jolts. Call a friend, scream in the phone, and then get off, right? Or whatever you need to do to kind of keep yourself fueled throughout the day. The other is community, right? Having a group where you could be like, things are stressful. Okay, I'm back, right? Like, so you're not holding it all inside feels really, really important to manage that high demanding job.
Yeah, I feel like I'm aligned with Stephanie on micro moments. And like the last thing I'll just end with is, I think as moms and caretakers, we forget to play ourselves, and play looks differently for many people, but like go seek joy and play in whatever you can, whether it's on the weekend or in the day. Like for me, a sanity walk, and sometimes it's a crying sanity walk, but like do what you need to do to release some of that energy.
And Amanda, thank you so much too for sponsoring this panel for House of Wise. If you guys haven't had a chance to check it out, I highly encourage you to do so. I could slow down over my words a little bit and take a pause. Thank you to this great panel. I know it really, really resonated with our audience, so I wish you all the best. And I think you gave some great advice headed into the weekend for people to really think about. So thank you all for that.